In a small, quiet town somewhere in Kentucky lived a man named Ethan Cole. He was the kind of person most people never noticed, the one who worked quietly, paid his bills, and never made much noise. But deep inside, Ethan carried something rare, a promise to himself, a promise that one day he would rise above everything life threw at him. 5 years ago, Ethan's life looked normal. He had a steady job at a furniture factory, a small rented house, and a wife who loved him deeply. He wasn't rich, but he was content. Then one morning, everything changed. The factory shut down. "We're sorry, Ethan," the manager said. "The company's bankrupt." Those words hit harder than a punch. Within weeks, bills piled up, rent was overdue, and groceries became a luxury. Ethan tried applying everywhere, construction sites, delivery services, diners, but no one was hiring. His wife, Sarah, tried to stay strong at first, but day after day, hope slipped away. One cold February evening, she stood by the door, tears running down her face. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan," she whispered. "I just can't." And she left. The sound of that door closing was the loneliest sound Ethan had ever heard. That night, he walked for hours through the empty streets until he reached the old bridge outside town. The river below was frozen, the air cold enough to bite through his coat. He stood there staring into the dark water, thinking maybe it was time to give up. But then from the shadows, a voice called out, old, tired, yet strangely kind. "Don't do it, son," said a homeless man sitting nearby. "The water's cold, but life without trying is colder." Those words stopped Ethan. He turned around, looked at the man, and for the first time in weeks he felt something. Not hope exactly, but defiance. That night he went home, sat in the dark and whispered to himself, "I don't care if the world forgets me. I will not quit." The next morning, he started walking again. Door to door, business to business, asking for work. 100 rejections later, one man finally said yes. "I can't pay you much," said Mr. Turner, who owned a small auto repair shop, "but you can help around the garage." Ethan accepted without hesitation. He cleaned floors, carried tools, and learned quietly by watching others. He didn't know anything about cars. But every night after work, he stayed late, watching YouTube tutorials on his old cracked phone. Slowly, painfully, he began to learn. Customers started noticing the quiet man who worked harder than anyone else. He didn't talk much, but his honesty spoke for him. Still, life was far from easy. Ethan lived in a single-room apartment with a leaking roof. He skipped meals to save money. But he never stopped working, never stopped believing. One day, Mr. Turner said, "Ethan, you've got something most folks don't. Heart. I'm retiring soon. Maybe you should think about starting your own shop." Ethan laughed softly. "Sir, I can barely buy groceries." "How could I start a shop?" Mr. Turner smiled. "Start with what you have. That's what I did." Those words stuck with Ethan. Over the next year, he saved every dollar he could. He sold old tools, repaired engines for neighbors, and finally, after months of sacrifice, for weeks, no one came. Ethan sat alone, listening to the hum of the highway, wondering if he'd made another mistake. Then, one afternoon, an old woman drove in with a broken pickup truck. "Every mechanic wants $800 just to look at it," she said. Ethan fixed it in 3 hours and charged her $150. When she tried to pay more, he smiled. "Honest work, honest price," he said. The next day, she returned with 5 new customers. Word spread fast. People started saying, "Go to Cole's. He's the guy who works with heart." In a town full of scammers, Ethan's honesty stood out. Business grew, slowly but surely. For the first time in years, Ethan could breathe again. But life wasn't done testing him. One night, an electrical short caused a fire in the shed. Within minutes, everything was gone. The tools, the benches, the sign, burned to ashes. Ethan stood in the rain, watching his dream collapse again. The next morning, he walked back to that same bridge and found the same homeless man sitting there. "I lost everything again," Ethan said quietly. The man smiled faintly. "Then you're lucky," he said. "You've got nothing left to lose, except your faith." Those words hit him like lightning. Ethan returned to the ruins of his shop. Amid the ashes, he saw something. His old wooden sign, half burned but still readable. "Honest work, honest price." He wiped off the soot, took it in his arms and whispered, "We start again." A loyal customer offered him an empty garage to use temporarily. Ethan fixed it up and reopened his shop. Business was slow at first, but people remembered him, remembered his kindness, his honesty. And slowly, they came back. 2 years later, Cole's Auto Repairs became the largest independent repair shop in the county. Ethan hired people who were once like him. Veterans, single parents, drifters trying to rebuild their lives. Local newspapers called him the mechanic who refused to quit. But Ethan didn't care about fame. He cared about people. One day, a teenage boy came into the shop and said, "Sir, how did you do it? Everyone said you'd fail." Ethan smiled, his hands still covered in grease. "I did fail," he said softly, "but I didn't stay there." He handed the boy a small wrench. "You don't need to be the smartest. You don't need to be the richest. You just have to be the one who refuses to quit." And in that quiet Kentucky town, people began to see something they had forgotten, that greatness doesn't always wear a suit or drive a fancy car. Sometimes it wears oil-stained hands and a heart that just won't give up. Ethan Cole never became famous, but in the hearts of those he helped, he became something greater, a reminder that hope is real, hard work matters, and faith still wins. Because at the end of the day, success isn't about where you start, it's about how many times you stand back up.